Welcome to Wild Contemplations with Kristin and Cori. I'm Kristin. I'm a 1-3 emotional projector and an astrology Sag Sun, Libra Moon, Pisces rising. Cori and I have been journeying around the wheel now for 2, 3 months now. And we are really just tuning into how we're experiencing the energies. Cori brings a lot of wisdom between astrology, human design, and gene keys. And then I just bring my projector experience and what I'm feeling in the energies. And also my knowledge in human design and the little that I know in astrology. And yeah, we're having fun just taking this journey together. And it's brought a lot of healing, I think, for both of us. So, Cori, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Kristin. I'm Cori. I am a 4-6 sacral manifesting generator, a Cancer Sun, Virgo Moon, Virgo Rising. And we're happy to be on this adventure together. It's become a really sacred sort of ritual for both of us, I feel, healing sacred ritual. And yeah, we're happy to connect with you all across space and time and and just share what's coming up for us as the sun moves around the wheel and we ground the energy with the earth. So usually we do a little check-in after we take a few breaths together. Last week we were contemplating the sun in 35 and the earth in 5, which were yeah, part of Kristin's prime gifts. And so we'll check in with those. And then this week we'll be contemplating the sun in 45 and the earth in 26. Um, but we'll start first with a few breaths. If it feels good to close your eyes or soften your gaze, maybe bring a hand to the belly or the heart, just settling in and taking 3 breaths together. Okay. Yeah, I'll just share the frequency bands of the 35-5, and we have moved into the 45-26. So we are, um, I think, a day or two into that energy. I'll share those as well as we have been the last few episodes, since we've been doing this kind of like live in the transit. So for the 35, we have the frequency bands of hunger, adventure, and boundlessness. And for the 5, impatience, patience, and timelessness. And we would have spent most of our little break in that energy. But again, in the last couple days, the sun moved into the 45 with the frequency bands of dominance, synergy, and communion. And the earth is now in the 26 with the frequency bands of pride, artfulness, and invisibility. So, yeah, how are you feeling, Kristin? What's been coming up?
This week has been a very interesting week. If you listen to last week's episode, I had spoken a little bit about my kitty cat transitioning. And so I have been continuing to navigate that. And, as much as all of that, it's a lot of energy to navigate. I honestly have been feeling very grounded. I have moments of like stress and sadness that pop up, of course, and yet I've been able to, still balance that with this grounded energy. I also got like a really big project that I'm working on in my business, kind of up and at least initiated. So I'm super excited about that. And I'm actually getting ready to start another one that I'm excited about as well. They're top secret right now.
Love it.
Um, not really, but maybe they'll come up at some point. I'll talk about them. But so I'm excited that I'm moving. I'm moving at a pace that it doesn't feel hurried. It doesn't feel rushed. And Corey and I have been talking about this, I think, on every episode about how quickly things are moving around us and how Corey talks a lot about slowing down, but I'm going to say that I feel in this moment that it just picks the pace that is resonant for me in that moment. So sometimes, I'm very much like in the energy and in the flow and in the momentum and building and creating and doing things. And then there's other spaces where I am taking it slower and in this state of more being and surrender. I do feel like I shared with Corey as well before we started recording. I tuned in, and one of the messages I got about my cat was that she is, she's 21 years old and she is a part of me that is like in transition right now, right? So she is transitioning out of this world and I am we're both moving into a new chapter, right? And that honestly was really comforting to me. And also, I can see very clearly, like, you know, any resistance that I have about letting it really go. But I think now that I have this clarity, I think it will move a little smoother now. So yeah, I not smoother is not the right word, but anyways, I'm sure you guys get what I'm feeling right now. But in respect to like the timelessness and boundlessness, I can feel that energy kind of hovering in my aura, if you will, just with respect to everything that I've been personally navigating and moving through this week.
Yeah, I also had really been feeling the timelessness and boundlessness in the 35 and 5. Um, and also, it was interesting because we talked last week about really befriending the shadow and like sitting for tea with the shadow. And I certainly was given an opportunity to do so. Like, I had a lot of impatience coming up in my field, particularly around like sort of long held dreams and visions that like I've been walking with for years, like part of much longer cycles. And I think I mentioned last week, but I have my Chiron in the 35 and I have my Uranus in the 5. And I have some activations with the ones we'll discuss today. So I have some stuff like, happening in my chart. And then there's also things happening in the sky, like interacting with my chart. So it felt very much like it kind of took me on this journey, like through time, like looking back. I was looking back like 25, 24 years, um, and just really feeling into some larger cycles, and kind of like processing grief, um, about parts of myself that are dying. And, I'm letting go of, much to what you're speaking to, and in the transition with Harley and the parts of yourself as well. And I feel like that's also coming up for me. And I guess I've like it feels so long since my grandma's memorial service, but it's really just been like a little more than a week. Again, I feel like that timelessness. So I feel like there is some connections to that. She was a very integral like person in my life, a very deep soul connection. And so yeah, I think that that was intertwined too. So I've been processing quite a bit in terms of like emotions, and it's felt a bit tender, but also like healing, deeply healing. So I think that's what's been coming up most for me.
Hmm. I'm feeling this underlying theme of identity really in both of our shares. And just this, I don't know, it's like it's knocking on the door and we're just standing on the other side. Um, Not really sure what to expect. But having open arms, like I see this vision of open arms towards this new identity as well. And that's exciting. I mean, I love an adventure. I love surprises. I love seeing how things unfold and just being surprised and delighted about, this wasn't what I expected, but this is pretty rad too. Yeah, so definitely feeling some identity stuff here. And these keys that we're contemplating today, um, what I think is really cool with the 45, did you share their bands?
I think I did share the frequency bands at the beginning.
Okay.
So yeah, go ahead.
So what I think is really fun about it is the 45 being in human design, the gatherer, and then the I Ching gathering together. Cori and I, thought we weren't going to really talk about this on this podcast, but it feels so relevant now. Her and I are hosting this space called the Weavers. And I think it's so fucking cool that we're hosting one this weekend and we're in these frequency bands. And like so much of even like the city of 45 is communion, right? It's so much of that space in the Weavers is to really hold sacred space for healers, for journeyers, for people who are on, the journey seeking. You don't necessarily have to have a business. You could, but just if you want a space to gather and talk about what you're feeling and what's coming up for you and be seen and feel like I'm not alone in this journey. I think it's really cool that it's aligning with what we're contemplating. And that was not planned at all. So that's really, really neat about this. And it's such a testament to how we don't really have to be so consumed in following these transits and what to expect, like people talking about this, yesterday and today being the luckiest days of the year. And I think people can get really in their heads about, well, what should I be doing? What like if this is my luckiest day, or should I be putting something out in my business? Should I be playing the lotto? Should I be whatever? I think we can get really in our heads about it when I personally find it so much cooler to experience life and be present in life and then hear about what's going on in the transits and then say, oh yeah, like that makes so much sense about what I've been feeling. And I think that's a lot about what this space is for Wild Contemplations. It's a lot of that. And also to see how we all experience the energies. Like last week, Cori talked about how her wheel is, sort of opposite the seasonal wheel that we're in, right? So she's more like she should probably move to Australia or something because I think they're opposite seasons. But she's more like in her going into her winter when we're going into summer right now. And so yeah, I think it's fascinating how we all bring these different perspectives and we can still find synergy amongst it all. Like even though Cori's like opposite us, opposite me, we're still both experiencing these like chapters closing, these identity shifts. There's still this connection there. And I think that's really cool. It makes life so much more flavorful than all of us being the same.
Absolutely. I actually have my Venus here in the 45. And so this is an energy that brings me great joy and like lights me up. I think my connection is kind of like cutting in and out. So when you were sharing some things, I was like on the edge, like so excited, and then it kind of like paused and came back later. So I wasn't there for everything you said, but I feel like I'm connected to it and still getting the overall energy of it. And um, yeah, it's this idea that like there is this magic when we come together, like that we're not here to like do this thing called life on our own, you know? Like we each have these unique experiences, these unique gifts, and like we're meant to come and bring them together, not to be in competition with one another or to be like in this like race of life to, you know, try to be the same or get to the same finish line or anything like that. It's so much more about this coming together and seeing what happens when we do, because there's like this other aura that kind of like forms then, right? And it's not just about any one person, then it's about the coming together of the many into this whole other thing that just like carries its own intelligence that is beyond what any one of us could fathom. Because each person is bringing that unique perspective and that unique thread or puzzle piece or whatever we want to call it. So that's why yeah, and that's what you were sharing about us having the gathering this weekend, like, and I think it's even on the new moon. We didn't plan any of that, you know, like, and that's the cool thing. One of the things that I actually really love about astrology is looking at things retrospectively, um, because it's sorry, this is already happening. Like, there's nothing that we have to do. It's just unfolding in our lives. It's the energy that's there and it plays out differently for each and every one of us. That's why it's like those things that say, "Oh, this is the luckiest day" or something like that. It's each of us is experiencing it in an incredibly unique way and there's so much nuance. So it's to like just generalize something that like this means this for everybody is just not the reality of it. And there's so much more to it. Again, like, um, you know, I've been sitting with the Jupiter Venus conjunction and they've been on a journey together. It's not just like one day of the year, you know, like this is part of larger cycles and it reaches back. And so I almost, for me at least, in my experience, this conjunction was more about sitting with grief, releasing like old parts of self and old stories. And it didn't necessarily feel like super jovial and exciting, like, you know, some of the pop astrology might make it out to be. Um, and yeah, I'll stop there for a second.
Yeah. What I'm feeling called to bring up as part of this contemplation is this, it feels like a calling to me in this gathering, right? Bringing people together, whether that's, what Cori and I are doing or something that, you're a part of in your own experience in life. But it's this is invitation for us to sit in circles, sit in spaces, be a part of experiences that celebrate differences, that celebrate that, like looking at, I'll just say, and I want to say this, but I don't in a way, like the wound of sisterhood, uh, the wound of how women interact with each other, right? And Weavers, what Cori and I are hosting is not dedicated to women, right? It's dedicated to anyone who feels called to the space. But I think that's also important. It's why I didn't want to bring up the sisterhood wound. I think it's a big part of it because women are a lot of the ones who show up in these spaces. But I've also had a lot of men come to different events that I've hosted. And I always very welcoming and ecstatic when that happens because it brings such a different energy to the space. And at any rate, that aside, I feel like, it's an opportunity to look at who we're gathering with and still where we see these silos happening around us. I see it a lot in the healing world more than I would like to admit, where I see different groups communing that, has created separation in the healing community. And that, I think some of it is generational, um, but also some of it is, I don't know. I mean, intuitively, what I feel is just like old, it feels like witch woundy. That's what it
Mhm.
feels like to me. Um, but at any rate, like whatever your experience is, it's almost like this is an opportunity for us to bring light to where we're not inviting people in, where are we not letting people sit with us? And yeah, like I even want to challenge myself in this too, right? Where I sometimes I can show up in spaces and say, this isn't my vibe. I'm not going to come back here again. I'm not going to do this event again because it's not my vibe. These aren't my people. And not really know behind the scenes like who needed to see me in that space, right? Who needed to come across me? Who needed to come across my energy, right? It's not always about the volume, I guess, that we receive in return when we interact in these spaces, right? Sometimes it is about being in a space and being triggered as fuck by someone who's in that space, but also loving other people there, right? And so that trigger doesn't become that there was something wrong with the space, right? But what did I need to learn in that moment? What was this showing me? I don't know. There's a separation, there's segregation in the healing space and many other spaces in the world, right? From a human perspective, like whether that's religion, politics, like whatever it's involved. There's definitely silos and segregation about what we perceive people's identities to be. It's Pride Month right now, right? Like, so sexuality too, right? Um, it's interesting. I think that this is, if you're listening to this right now, I think this is an invitation for all of us to look at where are we holding old lenses up when we view people? Where are we shutting people out that, maybe are just a part of their journey? I'll say this real quick and I promise I'll let Cori talk. I was doing some tuning in today and one of the messages that came through was this. I had a fear of not being respected come through. And I was tuning in on that. And the message that came through was that I was equating respect with being seen. And as a projector, especially, like I've navigated a lot of my life inviting my wisdom in spaces that weren't ready to see it. And so I've, harbored it as this rejection towards me and not seeing, not willing to see, not, this disrespect energy. And I won't go into all my tune-ins, at least not right now, but maybe they'll come up more in the episode. But there was a big theme of rejection um, in my tuning in. And so this was just another piece of it that looped into. And it was very interesting as I was tuning in on a bunch of different things, how this rejection, abandonment wound kept coming back up. And so I don't know where I was going with that. But maybe it was around being seen, right? And somebody who's, as someone who has felt unseen a lot of her life, you know, and the lenses people have seen me through or not seen me through, um, to flip that around, where can I've not seen a lot of people too. So where can I open and be willing to see someone else too? And also, of course, trusting the timing that we see and hear what we need to see in divine timing, of course. But I think it's still an opportunity for us to open the door a little bit more and say, where am I filtering? That maybe I would see something that's surprising and delightful. And if I just let more in, back to our conversation last week about protection, even, right? Okay, I will stop for real now.
I love it. You keep going for as long as you would like because there's so much wisdom that emanates from your being, and we all love to be in it and to receive it. And plus, I'm probably cutting in and out here, so you may have to carry this episode. But yeah, I feel like what you're touching on is so much of the 26 too, right? Like um, these this idea of like invisibility, of moving through the world and not needing to be seen, actually. Like knowing, like us knowing and really trusting our contribution and our wisdom and our truth, and knowing that we don't need to be seen or recognized really, um, because like we are that, it's this like energy that like it goes beneath the surface, and it's like doing something like in a trickster way. So I don't know if I went through like the gate and everything, but in human design, this is the gate of the egoist or sometimes the trickster. And so it's like kind of like almost like this energy has a really beautiful way of like knowing how to say things and knowing how to spread love and just like wisdom and energy, but maybe with it like underneath the surface so that it's not even like people don't even realize that it's happening. And again, like kind of doing things without people knowing about it, like have you ever kind of done something more anonymously, like a good deed or something like that, but without putting your name on it or like making it known that you were doing that? There's a feeling with that that's like, I don't know, there's something really special about it because it's like, right? And I think that that's maybe the underlying energy of this. When I tune into the artfulness, it's like I think about life in general, about like living life as art, like making your life your art. And I just think about with that, how much goes like on underneath the surface that like the world doesn't necessarily see, And that there's like a specialness to that and a sacredness to that. I think that we right now with like the way that social media is and everything, it's just like we can feel like we need this um, feedback through the likes and the engagement and all of that. I was even reading something earlier today, and they're like, there's a difference between being seen and like being really like heard and like taken in, and I think that, yeah, this energy really speaks to the many layers and levels of it. Obviously, with projector energy, it's so important to find like the people in your life that really truly see you and can like mirror back to you your brilliance and how amazing you are, because you know how dialed in you are to the other, that sometimes it's hard for you to see. But I think that like on a larger scale, sometimes, um, yeah, maybe we don't need to be seen as much as like the ego might want us to be.
Yeah. I mean, that loops back into identity, right? Because the ego is always trying to see itself or like see where its identity sits with another being or like with an experience, whatever. Like the ego is trying to always put itself where it believes it belongs. I think there's a lot of hierarchy stuff trapped in the ego, but it is all about being seen and where does its identity fit? Who am I like against you almost? I don't want to use the word against, but it's kind of, I would say, the way a traditional ego is, where do I stand next to you? Um, right? It's like when people walk into a room, and they feel that belonging or the not belonging. It's the ego evaluating the space, right? And deciding can I be seen here? Do I belong here? Does my identity fit in this space? Um, and then what's interesting, right, are the things that we tell ourselves afterwards, like if we don't feel that belonging. But anyways, it's interesting to sit with the maybe we don't need to be seen as much as we think we need to be. Um, this is something that I think as a projector and then coupled with just expectations in social media, I don't just the way I move through life, I don't always have the energy to be seen in something that I am navigating. I think that this space is actually really beautiful for that, for me, for my purposes. Um, because it is a little bit more like in touch with my life and what's going on with my life and things that I'm thinking about and experiencing in life right now. But in general, I find that I move at, even though I said I was slowing down earlier, I still move at like a pretty quick pace, navigating whatever I am internally. That by the time I go to share it, I feel like the energy's moved and then I don't have the energy to share that thing, or I'm like, what? Well, that was like last week. So last week, why would I share that now? Um, and so it brings up an interesting pattern, I think, for me, and something I do hear about other projectors is, like a lot of people will say we just want to see into your world as a projector. We just want to see your world and behind the scenes. And I don't personally do a great job at that. I try, but I am not consistent with it. And I don't beat myself up over that, but also the cool thing is I would say as much as I may be not seen on social media because I don't post a ton there, when I show up at events and in spaces, I very much feel like my energy is felt. And and that matters to me more than likes on social media, right? It because to me is almost not a true seeing. Sometimes it is, right? But sometimes too it's we're supporting the people that we love, right? Or we're businesses supporting each other and doesn't mean we don't see each other, but um it's the whole quality over quantity thing. So I don't know, it's interesting to sit with. I'll take that as a contemplation for me and just put it in my energy right now is where am I craving to be seen um and what is that telling me? Like what am I missing giving myself that I need to be seen by someone else?
I love that. I'm gonna also kind of sit with that. Um, and yeah, as you were talking, I was feeling like what you were building up to and sharing it, which was like, to me, it's so much more about the embodiment of those things. And like, you can feel that in someone's presence, when they, like you were saying, you move quickly, you process things quickly, and sometimes by the time, you think of sharing something, it's like it feels like the energy is kind of gone and like because it's like integrated and it's just part of you now and you don't need to make like a reel about it or a carousel about it. But it's like in you, like people can feel it in your auric field. And that's kind of what I feel like with the 26 is that there is this like very um very magnetic auric field that's just like powerful and you can feel in it in that energy like it again it's not something that is so much like what's going on it does have this invisible like element and quality to it because it's like it's not being said or like even maybe nothing's being done it's just you can walk into a room with that person and be like oh like I feel the love, the understanding, the wisdom, whatever it is, you can feel that embodied in just the being's presence. And that to me is like the artfulness and the way that this energy works. And I think with this pair, um, I've noticed in my own contemplation, because again, I have the 26 in my design Uranus, and um, yeah, so I've sat with both of these a bit and like their pairing and there's like this element of needing to be right sometimes too, right? With the like pride and dominance. There is this like feeling of like, oh gosh, I have to what it's in an ego circuitry too. It's like I need to be the one that's right. And sometimes there's this like needing then to make other people wrong. And it's kind of like what we were talking about, with like the gathering together and the way that like sort of cliques form and people that separation exists and all of those things because it's like again this feeling that we need to be like some people need to be up and some people need to be down. Some people need to be right and
Mm.
some people need to be wrong. Some people need to be good and some people need to be bad. It's like this, um, yeah, this way of kind of making ourselves feel better about ourselves. But when we do know who we are and when we're like good with what we're doing, I find that actually you don't care what anybody else is doing. So you don't need to be right in what you're doing and tell other people that they're wrong. I think it comes to these ideas of like insecurity and lack. I feel like those might be like the dilemmas of these two keys. So if you're like secure in yourself and your beliefs, then you don't feel the need to like make anybody else right or wrong because you just know that what's right for you is right for you and is right for somebody else is right for them and that it can all coexist. Like that it doesn't have to be one or the other. That it can live together and that it can create a richness because again, we have like all of these perspectives. And I think in the contemplation of this 26, Richard even talks about like he spent some time in Greece at some of like the camps where people were like seeking refuge and they were like living in pretty extreme conditions. And he said that there was this one group, the Kurds, I believe, and they found a way to just like make the most of their situation by like pooling everything they had together, like making these communal pots of food, coming and bringing, music, like different people playing different instruments and like finding different things to create, like tarps for the places that they were living and like just a way to all come together and everybody bring something. And then they were even like giving food to the people that were there to help. So it's like, it's showing that, like, I think we're afraid sometimes that if we're wrong or if we're not ahead or if we're not, being seen, that sometimes we won't have enough. That it's sometimes these are tied to resources, these keys. And so there is this feeling of like, survival, like I need to be on top in order to survive or something. But examples like those show us that actually, like, we don't need a whole lot to be able to come together and create abundance and create overflow and be able to share that with the community.
Mm. Yeah, because it's felt. It's less about what we've produced and more about the felt energy of it, like you were saying earlier. It made me really think about, me being a 1-3 in human design. You would think that well, what they say is that I would be the one that would teach all, from my mistakes. And here's what I learned. And like, these are the types of posts that I would put together. And there's probably 0% desire in me to create a post like that. However, I love reading posts like that. Um, but I don't desire to create in that way. And so when I show up in spaces, or I was talking a handful of episodes back, and it inspired me to write a post actually. So there's a post I wrote semi recently called The Projection Field. And it made me realize that it's when I'm in session with people that I see, it's like I connect to the wisdom that they are looking for. And I do that through my experience, through my lessons, through all of that. And so that is where my teaching comes in more, is when I'm in those spaces. And I get to share from my experience. And so it shows up. It's just such a testament to how things really show up differently for us, right? I'm not wrong as a 1-3 because I don't create posts that talk about my mistakes and what I learned from them, right? But I'm not afraid to have that conversation with someone, and I love speaking to that energy, especially when I'm one-on-one with someone. One of my mentors also, when you were sharing, it reminded me that she talks a lot about, when you were talking a bit about like that ego placement, how the ego is trying to like place itself. She talks about how when she meets people, she keeps the conversation focused on them. right? So she doesn't even like introduce herself or say what she does. She, flips the conversation onto them and just learns as much as she can about that person. And, at some point when that, this, I'm laughing because this could be, I guess this could be seen a little trickstery. I don't know. But, at some point, so people love talking about themselves in general. And so when at some point, inevitably, they end up asking like what she does and then find out she's like built this zillion-dollar company and whatever, right? She's this amazing person. And oh my gosh, she knows like she's so invested in me. She knows so much about me. And then that person basically becomes invested in you in a sense. I don't know. It's interesting and also I find like I can see trickster energy there, but I can also see that invisibility that you were talking about and how it's not important to lead with my accomplishments and all of that, but like I don't even like giving bios when I do podcast interviews and things like that or do when I show up at festivals. I don't love having a bio because I always say let my energy speak for itself. Because I I don't care how many accolades you have on your resume. Your energy is like to me is everything. I don't care if you're a Nobel Peace winner. I don't care about any of that stuff. Um, yeah, I just think your energy is really what matters. One last thing I'll share. I have the 26 it's the actual channel, the 2644 in human design. And this is a channel whenever somebody looks at my chart, this is pretty much 80% of the time people say, "Oh my gosh, you have the 2644." And they think it's like some big to do or whatever, but they've called it, a lot of people refer to it as the channel of sales. And I think this trickster energy can come into it right when it's used in its shadow. So if it's used to manipulate people. Um, but what I found is that I don't particularly love sales, but I find that because I am able to see people so deeply and I can pull something out that's pretty deep pretty quickly with someone that I meet. Um, and then I can reflect to them if they're seeking support. I can reflect to them like whether that's me or, I think you should go see a shaman or whatever it is. I feel like it's received so genuinely that it often does lead to sales because people believe me, and I'm not tricking them. If somebody comes to me for coaching support and they're in, for example, like an extreme state of grief and unable to really come out of that energy, then I will not see them as a coach. It's not integral to me, right? I mean, they either need time alone or, maybe with a therapist to process that grief before they're ready for my work, at least as a coach. Maybe not all coaches, right? Because there are trauma and grief coaches too, which is a really beautiful space to be in. But that's not me. I'm not, I'm not the grief holder. Cori, on the other hand, could be because she's got that sacral, non-emotional energy. But I just find it's not my skill. It's not what I'm here to do. And so I always refer out for that. But again, like I'm honest about that, like I don't think I'm your person. Let me give you some other people that I think you would probably resonate with. Um, so yeah, it's just kind of interesting. Because people get so excited about that channel and yet it has this trickster energy underneath it.
I love it. I also this channel is called the Channel of Surrender, And I
Mhm.
always think of the trickster energy in like a playful way. Obviously, it can manifest in a more manipulative way, but there is a real integrity with the 26. Like the 26 feels a deep, um, yeah, like it's important to be in integrity for the 26, and this channel in general is like really gifted at speaking from the heart. Um, like intuitively, it's very intuitive and it speaks from the heart and it's able to speak in a way that the person you're talking to understands you. You know, like you said, you can make it very clear whether you can help someone or not. And it's from this place of like the heart, not like a headspace or like and I think it is just so connected to the heart that again we can have it manifest in a lot of different ways, but when it even at the like the Siddhic level, like the invisibility or the artfulness, the trickster energy there is just the ways in which um like you're able to almost kind of like remind people of love without like using those words. You know, it's the way that we're able to um kind of infuse something with a deeper meaning without having to like tell about it. And it's also very humorous, very funny. Like it can be like it can make people laugh and just feel like a lightness and a playfulness that isn't so serious, you know? Um, in that way, I think it can really open people's hearts because it can kind of like um yeah, do it without them even really knowing what's going on, you know? Like, have you ever been somewhere where it's like serious, but then somebody makes like this joke and it seems to like open up everything? That's kind of how I experience this energy a lot of times. And I love its pairing too with like, this 45. There's such a benevolence with both of these, even though like we can see at some of the when we're more imbalanced and in the head and feeling like in that lack and insecurity and survival mode, that it can come out in these other ways that feel a bit more harsh. But there is this real benevolence to these that does want to support community and does want to share resources and does like want everybody to be part of it and taken care of. And like, the 45 is, I don't know if we said this, but in human design, it's the gate of the gatherer. Sometimes it's even called like the gate of the king or queen. And it lives in the throat center and reaches towards the heart. And the 21, which we would have contemplated back in Aries season. And it's like I think of it as this like benevolent, like how we would want to see a king or queen. A lot of the stories sometimes that we see play out in movies and books and things like that. Um, Sometimes the king or queen is a bit more harsh, but sometimes we see one that like is really truly loving its community and wanting everyone in the kingdom or queendom to be thriving and like finding ways to help everyone. And that's like what this energy really is speaking to and wanting to do, even when there's just that imbalance and it's getting run through a different yeah, lens that is a bit more survival based. It's really wanting there to be the resources to spread out and to have everyone have a good time. I just kind of see like one of those big parties, like if we're thinking about like king, queen, trickster, like the jester, like a big party in like a hall and everyone's enjoying themselves and laughing and all of those sort of things.
Mm. It brought through another invitation as you were sharing that. And that invitation for us is to offer something, like give something every day. Like whether that's a resource or a thank you or holding the door for someone, just exchange a kindness or put a kindness forward every day, just one. There's a real imbalance right now, I feel, with survival and lack energy. And maybe this is, again, the energy is inviting us to shift that a little bit and offer more kindness, abundance, resources into the space. And it doesn't have to be, I'm paying for the person behind me, kind of pay it forward stuff. It doesn't have to be anything huge, right? Um, right? Or I'm going to walk up to someone and I'm going to ask them what their biggest credit card debt is, and I'm going to pay that off for them. I would love if somebody did that for me.
Yeah. Bring it on.
But, it doesn't have to be a grand gesture, right? But just a kindness. You have really pretty eyes, or you have a nice smile. I like your outfit today. It, it just something, exchanging a kindness towards someone and infusing more of that into the world so that we can really feel this energy of abundance, even if right now so many people are stuck in this fear, lack, survival space. Um, yeah, there's an invitation there for sure.
Yeah, that gives me like full body chills and it's certainly, yeah, I think what we're being called to do in times where like, we are in these great times of change and that can bring up a lot of fear and that can bring up the, you know, survival um frequency more and more and the way that we remember is through love, like that's how we'll remember that we don't have to um like fight against one another or separate ourselves from one another, but that we can come together in these really beautiful ways that don't, again, it doesn't have to be this big thing that um like depletes us or anything. It can be these small little kindnesses, as you said, that can make a huge difference in someone's day and shift the energy without us even really doing a whole lot, which is pretty amazing.
Two birds just flew into our bird feeder.
I love it.
Um, I think this is a good place to wrap up. So, do you have anything else on your heart before you feel complete?
No, I think I feel really complete. My heart feels expanded and happy. Thank you for that invitation.
Yeah. So, just to wrap up here, from my perspective, I think that some of the bigger invitations for us right now are to look at where are we being unwilling to see someone else because they project an energy or hold some sort of difference that we think is not compatible, right? So where are we closing ourselves off, maybe protecting too much in that space? And how can we open up and start to break down some of these walls that surround different communities and, and actually create true community. Um, and then the other piece is offering a kindness to someone, just one a day, especially if you're in a space right now where you're feeling a bit, in that martyr victim space where it just feels like nothing is going right for you in your life. Um, the more what we focus on expands. So I think when we start to invite that energy in, whether you're in a space of lack, survival, fear, anyways, I think a lot of the world is right now. But even if you're not in that space, I think that the more of us contributing to that energy and that resonance in the world, the more of it will start to see happening. And maybe it'll start to overcome some of the big, big, big fear energy that is happening right now in the human realms of politics and all kinds of stuff, right? It's a lot. It's a lot. And I think it weighs on all of us, whether or not we think about it. Like, I don't watch the news or any of that. And I can still feel the heaviness. I can still feel that energy. So, um, yeah, I think just inviting us to bring a little bit more lightness in. Like you were saying, the trickster humor when it's inappropriate. Like I always thought that was my Scorpio and Mercury that did that, but maybe it's my 26. I don't know. Maybe it's both.
Oh, yeah.
But thank you guys for being here, for being a part of this journey with us. It means a lot. And as always, we appreciate any shares, comments that you want to share with how you're experiencing the energies. Um, we're just really glad to be on this journey with each other and to have you all on the journey with us. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We'll see you next week.